sacrifice must be made. Find them, they must not escape. Sandra and Amaka sat on a wooden bench outside their one-room apartment in Makoko. The night air was thick with the scent of fried plantains from a roadside cellar, mixed with the distant smell of the open drainage. Mosquito buzzed around them, but they were too deep in conversation to notice. "I'm tired of this life," Sandra said, stretching her long legs in frustration. She was a dark-skinned beauty, tall and curvy, with an attitude to match her personality. "Every day, struggle. I want to enjoy life, Amaka." Amaka nodded in agreement, her brown eyes shining with excitement. "Me too, my sister. See all those Instagram girls traveling to Dubai, wearing designers, driving big cars. Do you think they got there by selling pure water?" Sandra scoffed. "No, they date rich men. That's what we need to do. No more suffering." Amaka smiled. "Yes, so no more trekking under this hot sun. No more eating garri and granuts every day. We deserve better." At that moment, a shiny black Mercedes-Benz passed by, slowing just enough for the girls to catch a glimpse of the well-dressed man inside. He wore a gold wristwatch that glittered even under the dim street light. Amaka sighed. "Just look at that," she whispered. "That's the kind of man I need in my life." Sandra smiled mischievously. "Then let's find one." Right there and then, their dangerous adventure began. The following weekend, Sandra and Amaka transformed themselves into the kind of women they believed wealthy men desired. Sandra borrowed a golden dress from a friend, and Amaka squeezed into a tight red gown she had kept for special occasions. They painted their faces carefully, applied lip gloss, and styled their wigs. "Tonight, we shine," Amaka declared as they admired their reflections in a small cracked mirror. They took a taxi to a popular nightclub in the main city, a place known for attracting rich men. The moment they stepped inside, they felt like queens. The air was filled with the scent of expensive perfume, and the music boomed loudly. Everywhere, beautiful women danced, laughed, and clung to men who bought them drinks. Sandra spotted a man at the bar, dressed in an expensive suit. He had a confident aura and a thick gold chain around his neck. She nudged Amaka, "That's one over there." They walked over to him, their hips swaying. "Good evening, handsome," Sandra pawed. The man turned and smiled, revealing white teeth. He eyed them slowly before replying, "Good evening, ladies. What brings such beauty here tonight?" Sandra and Amaka exchanged glances. This was it, the life they wanted. Little did they know that their desires would lead them into something far darker than they could have ever imagined. Sandra and Amaka spent the night drinking, laughing, and entertaining the rich man they had approached. His name was Femi, a businessman who deals in imports and exports, though he never specified what exactly he imported and exported. Femi ordered the most expensive drinks and even gave Amaka a bundle of naira notes just for smiling at him. The night felt like a magic until Sandra noticed someone watching them. Across the club, a man sat alone in the VIP section, sipping a glass of whiskey. He was older, maybe in his late 40s, with deep brown skin and a sharp calculating gaze. He wore a black kaftan, and his gold-rimmed glasses glowed under the club's dim lights. Every time Sandra looked up, his eyes were on them. "Amaka, do you see that man?" Sandra whispered. Amaka followed her gaze and shrugged. "Maybe he likes us." But there was something about the way he watched them. It was not admiration, it was something else. Then suddenly, the man stood up and walked towards them. "Hello, ladies," he said in a deep, rich voice. "I couldn't help but notice your energy. You remind me of diamonds, beautiful and rare." Sandra and Amaka giggled. They were used to sweet words from men. "I'm Chief Otumba," he continued, "and I would like to invite you both to an exclusive party this weekend. How about that? It's a place for people who enjoy the finer things of life." Sandra's heart raced. This was exactly what they had been waiting for. Amaka smiled. "We would love to come." Chief Otumba handed them a black invitation card. "Wear something beautiful," he said before walking away. As they looked at the invitation, they had no idea they had just accepted an invitation to hell. Hey lovelies! Hope you're finding this story interesting. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel at African Storytales by Abby. Like, comment and share this story with your family and loved ones, and grab your popcorn as we dive deeper into the more intriguing parts of this story you don't want to miss. Thank you. The night of the party arrived. Sandra and Amaka wore their best dresses. A shiny black SUV picked them up. The SUV was driven by a silent man in dark sunglasses. As the car sped down the highway, the bright lights of Makoko faded behind them. The road grew darker, the buildings fewer. "Where is this party?" Amaka asked, a hint of nervousness in her voice. "Relax," Sandra said. "Rich men likes privacy." But as the car turned onto a lonely, narrow road leading into a forest, Sandra's confidence was lost. The trees loomed high, their branches forming a silent shadows under the moonlight. Finally, they arrived at a massive white mansion, standing alone in the middle of nowhere. The gate opened silently and the SUV drove in. Inside the house was filled with beautiful people, all laughing and drinking expensive champagne. But something felt off. The men in the room all had the same cold, calculated eyes. The women seemed dazed, as if they weren't entirely aware of their surroundings. Sandra whispered to Amaka, "Something is strange about this place." But before they could react, Chief Otumba appeared, smiling. "Welcome, my beautiful ladies," he said. "Tonight, you will experience true luxury." He handed them glasses of wine. Sandra hesitated. Amaka, always eager, took a sip first. Expensive," she chuckled. Sandra smelled hers before taking a sip from it. Something wasn't right. There was a strange scent beneath the aroma of the wine. Then, before she could say anything, Amaka's eyes rolled back and she collapsed. But before she could move, strong hands grabbed her from behind. The last thing she heard was Chief Otumba's voice whispering, "You were looking for rich men, weren't you?" Before her eyes went blank. Sandra's eyes fluttered open to the darkness, her head aching badly, and a sickening dizziness made her stomach churn. She tried to move, but realized her wrists and ankles were bound with thick ropes. "Amaka," she whispered, her voice hoarse. Amaka groaned and answered her from the shadows. "Sandra, where are we?" Amaka's voice was weak, filled with confusion and fear. Sandra struggled, twisting her hands. The air smelled of damp earth, sweat, and something metallic, something she couldn't quite place. A dim light flickered to life, and Sandra's breath caught in her throat. They were in a cold, windowless room, with walls made of rough stones. A single wooden door stood across from them, shut tight. Amaka was slumped beside her, her red gown torn at the hem. Her hair was disheveled, and her lips were dry. I don't know, Sandra stammered. The last thing I remembered was drinking the wine. Amaka started crying. Sandra, I'm scared. Sandra clenched her teeth. Me too. Just then, footsteps echoed outside the door, heavy, slow, and deliberate. Sandra held her breath as the door creaked open. A tall man in black robe stepped in, his face shadowed under a hood. Behind him, Chief Otumba entered, his expression calm. Good, you are awake, he said smoothly. Welcome to the house of the chosen. Sandra's pulse pounded in her ears. What is this, and where are we? Otumba sighed. You both wanted wealth. You wanted luxury. But my dear, nothing in life is free. Amaka gasped. What do you mean? The robed man stepped forward. His voice was deep and chilling. You have been chosen for the ritual of prosperity. Sandra's body turned to eyes. Sacrifice? She whispered. Otumba smiled. No. That word sounds so harsh, Otumba said. Sandra's heart raced. They had to get out of here, she thought to herself. Otumba signaled to the man with him. Prepare them. The ceremony begins at midnight. Two more robed figures entered and yanked Sandra and Amaka to their feet. Leave us alone, Sandra screamed, kicking wildly. Amaka started crying, trying to fight them off, but they were too strong. The men dragged them down a long, dark corridor, their footsteps echoing on the stone floor. The corridor opened into a massive hall, lit by flickering torchlights. Symbols were drawn in red on the walls, and in the center of the room was a large circular altar made of black stone. Sandra's stomach churned. Dried blood stained the altar. Women stood around the room, their faces blank, their bodies draped in white robes. Their eyes were empty, as if their souls had been drained from them. A deep voice boomed through the hall. The sacrifice must be made. A shiver ran down Sandra's spine as she turned to see a figure seated on an ornate chair at the far end of the hall. He was an old man, dressed in gold robes, his skin dark as the night, his eyes burned with something unnatural. The chief priest, one of the robed men, whispered. The priest gazed settled on Sandra and Amaka. These ones are worthy. Sandra struggled against her captors. Let us go. We are not part of this. The priest let out a slow, sinister chuckle. Oh, but you are. You came looking for rich men, for luxury, for a shortcut to success. This is the price. Amaka sobbed. Please, we don't want this. The priest raised a hand. The crowd went silent. You have two choices, he said. Become one of us, or be sacrificed to the gods. Sandra's mind raced. Become one of them? Did that mean they would have to? No, she hissed. Never. The priest smiled, then prepared them for the ritual. The crowd shouted into chants as Sandra and Amaka were dragged towards the altar. But Sandra wasn't giving up. Not yet. As the chants grew louder, Sandra's mind worked fast. They needed a distraction, she whispered to Amaka. When I give the signal, run. Amaka nodded, tears streaming down her face. As they reached the altar, one of the robed men moved to tie Sandra down. She took a deep breath and then spat in his face. The man recoiled. Sandra seized the moment, raising her knee and slamming it into his stomach. He grunted in pain, stumbling backwards. Amaka screamed and kicked the other man. The room erupted in chaos. Run! Sandra shouted, grabbing Amaka's hand. They both ran towards the only exit they could see, a narrow passageway at the side of the hall. The cultists roared in anger. Stop them! Sandra's heart pounded as they dashed down the dark passage, their feet slamming against the stone floor behind